By the Whore of Rome. Good evening, folks. Super Bowl's going on, but I haven't participated in a Super Bowl game, watching it during live in many years. Used to be in my life, I was not going to miss the Super Bowl no matter who was playing in it. It was a major event in my life, and as I gradually started coming out of the world, that was one of the things that I had to remove out of my life, was the NFL and such. But this particular video came to pass because I got invited to a huge mega church in Texarkana, Texas. Happens to be a Baptist church, and that was the way I fed on the breast of the Baptist church, um, which I'll tell you later. But I breastfed on the Baptist church's teat for 39 years from the time I was born, and my mother took me uh, into the Baptist church, and then of course when I got married and started having children, I did my family the same way and such. So I wanted to talk a little bit about um, that, but also going to this church, I wanted to ask some questions to the leaders of that church, and two, I wanted to do it out of love. I didn't want to do it out of anything that would make them, I didn't want to make them angry or anything. I would just hope to make them critically think of where they're at with their understanding of Scripture. Are they teaching the true gospel, or are they teaching a gospel that is a false gospel? So uh, we'll look a little bit more at that here in a little bit, but let's take a look at who these two individuals are in the statue. They're representative of Romulus and Remus. So in Roman mythology, Romulus and Remus are twin brothers whose story tells of the events that led the founding of the city of Rome and the Roman kingdom by Romulus, following his fratricide of Remus. Fratricide, so I had to look that up. But it's fraternity, they're brothers, and icide would be homicide. Romulus killed Remus, just like the story in Genesis 1 of Genesis, I'm sorry, where the two sons of Eve, uh, the one killed the other one. So Rome has their own version of that here. The image of a she-wolf suckling the twins in their infancy has been a symbol of the city of Rome in the ancient Romans since at least the 3rd century BC. So that's before the period of the Messiah. Although the tale takes place before the founding of Rome around 750 BC, the earliest known written account of the myth is from the late 3rd century BC. So that's just what it said here. So we look at Rome, Vatican City. I just punched that up. Vatican City. That's in the heart of Rome here. Okay, you see that? That's where the Vatican is. It's in the heart of Rome. So just like we saw the city of Rome here, that's in the heart of Rome, just like the Vatican is. And so one of the sermons of the pastor, the last sermon I listened to from him in the audience, he talked about the breast of the wife, to satisfy yourself on the breast of the wife. And I got thinking about that during that sermon, and just this image came into my head of Romulus and Remus nursing on the she-wolf. And then I just find these two passages interesting here. Matthew 7:15, beware of the false prophets, which come to you in sheep's clothing, but inwardly they are ravening wolves. So both of these leaders of this church, they look like they're innocent people. They look like they're, if you didn't know them from Adam, you just assume that they're just a good person, but are they teaching good things? And then we have again the Messiah speaking here in Matthew 10:16. Behold, I send you forth as sheep in the midst of wolves. Be ye therefore wise as serpents and harmless as doves. So that's what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to be wise as serpents and harmless as doves. So what that what that's basically telling me, we've got to do our due diligence and not rely, don't eat from one man, what one man has to offer, or what one, in this sense, why would you just listen to to what the Baptists are telling you how to live your life? Uh, don't we want to be like Bereans and study the scriptures for ourselves to see if these things are true? So when this particular sermon, when he mentioned the breast of the wife were to satisfy us, then I immediately thought of that she-wolf nursing them two sons of, or the two sons, Romulus and Remus, or the two children, Romulus and Remus. So in Revelation 17:5, and upon her forehead a name written, Mystery Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots and abominations of the earth. The mother of harlots. So this is a mother is a woman. So automatically we know scripturally that a woman in Scripture is representative of an assembly, of an ecclesiastical assembly. So the mother of harlots, who are those harlots? And abominations of the earth. So who are the harlots? Well, by my judgment through the scriptures, what I go and study out in the scriptures, I find the Baptist church to be a harlot. And I was raised up in a Baptist church. And again, I'm saying this out of love. This is not out of anger. I'm pleading with these folks to not listening to just one individual, to start looking at scriptures on their own and seeing if these things are true, what their Baptist church is teaching them, or any other church that has basically umbrellaed under the mother of harlots, Mystery Babylon, any of these other churches. But I want to specifically speak to this Baptist upbringing that I had, and also this church of this customer and friend of mine that invited me to come to it. So here we go. So when I look up harlot, I get strumpet, which is a Greek Strong's number 4204, pornography. Just think of it in that way. The Greek words, a lot of our words come from the Greek, and that's where pornography comes from. But it meant a strumpet. I'd never heard of a strumpet, so when we look at a strumpet, it just says harlot, prostitute, concubine, bold, lascivious woman. And that's mid-14th century through the etymology. So that word in particular happens 12 times. So when I looked up in the Thayers and I went to BibleHub.com, it says here, Hebraistically, metaphorically, and adulteress. So of Babylon. For example, Rome, the chief seat of idolatry. So right there alone, even the Thayers is showing that Rome is where the seat of Babylon is, the chief seat of idolatry. And Babylon just means confusion, and that's what this whore has done. She's just confused the words. And this is not a war of people anymore, where it's a physical war of people. This is a war of words, and this is what this Mystery Babylon, the Vatican City, has done. From even before they became the Vatican in 538 AD, they were already vying for seats. They already had bishops in early Rome, even in the BCs when they first were known to be established. They had bishops, so they had this ecclesiastical order at that point in time, where they have basically, especially in the 4th century, of what Constantine did, and he took a lot of the Roman festivals, such as Valentine's Day. They converted it from what used to be a sadistic pagan festival, and moved Valentine's Day over into, and they named it after Saint Valentine. That was supposed to be this awesome, perfect type of priest or pope back in the day. I think he was a priest, not a pope. But anyway, this is where what the scripture talks about, that mother of harlots. It's Rome. That's where it is. And the harlots are all the churches of the world that teach a false gospel. So now let's look at Revelation 12:17. And the dragon was wroth with the woman, and went to make war with the remnant of her seed, which keep the commandments of Elohim, and have the testimony of Yahushua HaMashiach. So this is, you'll see me use these words. Elohim just is the word that is got, it was replaced with God in the later scriptures, but Elohim is the original meaning for that title, God. And then Yahushua HaMashiach is just basically, as the world knows, Jesus the Messiah. So we know those names are not the true names of the Father. They're not the true title of the Father. But we're not going to get off in that. Just wanted to say, when you see these ancient pictographs here, Hebrew pictographs, this is just me trying to show how these names would have been spelt back in the original times. Now, wife, I looked at wife in etymology, and wife equals a woman of gentle birth. And remember, when we studied the lamb earlier in one of my other videos, lamb doesn't mean a four-legged animal, just like John the Baptist said, look, the Lamb of Elohim. He wasn't talking about a four-legged woolly animal walking by. He was talking about the Messiah right here, Yahushua HaMashiach. But it means gentle persons. So woman of gentle birth, if a gentle person is speaking, if a lamb is speaking to you and teaching you in how to live life, then that woman was a woman of gentle birth. So it's not, and the dragon was wroth with the woman. It's not talking about Mary, the physical mother of the Messiah. It's talking about the woman, the church, the woman church of the Messiah that he gave birth to through his word and such. That's what was being given birth with. So what happens when the two top teachers of a mega Baptist church in Texarkana, Texas are asked scriptural questions? Okay. So this is the church. Beautiful, beautiful place, man. The architecture on the outside, the stuff on the inside is just beautiful inside and out as far as pleasing to the eyes. And then this is where I parked. There's just happened to be like a little sign out behind where I parked, and it says, "Rejoice always, pray without ceasing, in everything give thanks." Hallelujah. And that's 1 Thessalonians 5:16-18. So you can see that they definitely share scripture, but are they taking the scripture and they teaching scripture by what they understand of the words, or what they are they teaching of what the real meaning of the words are? So this is inside the church. So when you walk in there, you go in, they've got a band, they got a choir here. As you see, these are like big old pipe organs here. They got all kinds of stained glass windows and stuff. Beautiful, beautiful architecture. Although I noticed back at the back they had some two-winged angels too in their stained glass. So again, I won't go any further on that. But this was just a picture of them doing. They were actually doing one of the old songs from the Baptist church I went to, is "Leaning on the Everlasting Arms," which is a major major song that was sung in the Baptist church that I was reared in. So this was this is the associate pastor. His name is Chris Schroeder, and this is his wife. And these two were the ones that taught the Sunday school class. So I sat in the Sunday class, and there's probably, I would guesstimate, around 60 people inside there. What I found fascinating, with the situation with health nowadays when we need to eat better and do better. When you come into the Sunday school class, which they happen to have in the gym because it's such a big class, they have donuts and coffee available. So, and I was, of course, I was offered a donut when I came in. Of course, I made a comment. I said, well, I'm trying to watch out for my health and such. So, anyway, so that was my introduction into the Sunday school class there. And then, of course, I heard these two teach and such. So, my first question was going to be to him here, Chris Schroeder. So before I go on too, I'd like to share Romans 3 verses 3 and 4. For what if some did not believe? Shall their unbelief make the faith of Elohim without effect? Absolutely not. If somebody doesn't believe, doesn't make uh, the faith of Elohim without effect. Absolutely not. Elohim forbid, says Paul. Yeah, let Elohim be true. Yeah, absolutely. Hallelujah. But every man a liar. I'm a liar. We've all lied in our life, whether we want to admit it or not. We are all liars. So, and we've all misconstrued scripture. I used to be misconstrue scriptures a lot, especially when I was, in the Baptist church. I had never read the scriptures all the way through, so I definitely didn't know a lot of things, but I had an opinion, and to have an opinion on something without studying it through is you very well will make a false diagnosis at that time. So that's why it's so easy for these preachers to set themselves up to be these teachers in these churches, and the people, they just come and listen to them. They don't do their due diligence and study the scriptures out for themselves and dive deeper and see what those words meant in the Hebrew and Greek, and then go even to the point where they wrote it into the English. See what those words really originally meant in the English when they were translated from the Hebrew and Greek over into the English. So every man is a liar, and we have to admit that. So don't take anything I tell you. Go study it out for yourselves. But I'm just trying to provide some evidence here through the word of Elohim to provide to you. And so I've done my due diligence to do that here in this video. And it says, as it is written, that thou mightest be justified in thy sayings and mightest overcome when thou art judged. So anytime that somebody judges us, if we're strong with the word inside of us, then we're going to be able to overcome those things when we're done. So, but again, mainly let the Almighty be true, but every man a liar. So Chris Schroeder's question was, it wasn't this question here. The question I asked him, I said, why do the Baptists worship on Sunday? That was my question. And Chris, nice fella, real nice, pleasant to speak to and such. He said, well, that's a good question. He said, I don't know if I can get you an answer today. And I said, well, that's okay. I said, can you get it to me within a week? He said, yeah, I'll have you an answer next week. But he still said, well, even before that, he said, well, I think it's because the Messiah was resurrected on the first day of the week. And I said, okay. I said, is there any scriptures that beyond that said that they would change the Sabbath to Sunday worship? And he said, no, I can't think of any at this time. But he said, if you come back next Sunday, I'll have you an answer. So so I came back the next Sunday, and before the first time I talked to him, I waited till the class was over, and I waited till everybody that was speaking to him had gotten done, and I was just patiently waited. And then I finally, after he was done, I went up to him. I introduced myself, and I said, "Hey, I'm Kevin Strange. I went to Baptist church until I was 39 years old, and then I left." And I said, for pretty much the past 22 years, I've been doing a lot of self-research and research with other people that have done the same thing. They have left the organized religion and such. So I have a question for you. And that's when I asked, why did the Baptists worship on Sunday? And so this second Sunday when I come back, I'm sitting in the front row like I did the first week. So even before the class started, and I was sitting there, I was taking notes. I was looking at the Sunday school, what they were going to be teaching. And so I was already looking up the scriptures and such and trying to get ready for it. And next thing I know, he sat down beside me, kind of slaps me on the left leg, and he said, "Hey, how you doing?" He said, "Good to see you back." And I said, "Yeah, well, good to be here," I said. And he said, "Well, he said, have you ever heard of Got Questions?" And at first it didn't quite get over to me. But then I really realized he was talking about a website called Got Questions, and you're seeing it right here. It's a organization that's put a website together for anybody that has a question about the Bible, that you can go there and ask those questions. So instead of him coming physically to me and even, making a sheet out with verses that would help prove why they worship on Sunday, he didn't do that. He said, go to Got Questions and ask them that question. That's what he told me. And it just blew my mind at that time that this is the associate pastor of this mega church that has thousands of members, that he would tell me to do that. And so I did. When I got back and I started on this video, I went to Got Questions, and instead I asked the question, why do Baptists worship on Sunday? Well, it changed it to Christians. So why do Christians worship on Sunday? So I got the question, and here's the answer. Part of the answer. This isn't all the answer. I just wanted to put the pertinent here, but let's read through it real quick. Scripture never mentions any Sabbath, Saturday. So they associate Saturday with the Sabbath, and Saturday is not the Sabbath either. The Sabbath is based on the lights from above. Go read Genesis 1:14 through 16. Has nothing to do with a 7-day recycling week. It has everything to do with the lights, the sun, moon, and the stars. So it's a celestial calendar. It has nothing to do with a recycling 7-day week. So they even mention Saturday there, so that just shows Got Questions. They know that the Sabbath that the Jews, which are questionable whether they're real or not today, kept a Sabbath on Saturday, so they just revert to that Saturday Sabbath and not to the lights above. So but it says here, Scripture never mentions any Sabbath gatherings by believers for fellowship or worship. Well, that alone is false, and I'm going to prove that in this study. I'm going to show y'all scriptures. However, there are clear passages that mention the first day of the week, Sunday. So it don't mention Sunday. There's no scripture with Sunday or Saturday. There's scriptures with Sabbath, and there are something. But it's where it says first day of the week. That is not day, guys. And again, I'm going to prove that. I proved it in my other videos that I'm going to speak about. But day is not there. For instance, Acts 27 states that on the first day of the week we came together to break bread. Paul also urges the Corinthian believers on the first day of every week, each one of you should set aside a sum of money in keeping with his income. So here's what it says. You should set aside a sum of money in keeping with his income, with Paul's income, okay? So, 1 Corinthians 16:2. So these two in red. If you want to stop the video now and read the rest of this, you're welcome to. Here's the link down there. You can go to Got Questions, ask the same question, get the whole spiel. But I wanted to cover, let's just see if these two scriptures that Got Questions that Chris Schroeder told me to go seek out to see if it proves that the worship day is supposed to be on the Pope Gregorian calendar of Sunday. Is that what it's supposed to be? So Acts 27 It says, and this is the King Jimmy version, and upon the first day of the week, when the disciples came together to break bread, Paul preached unto them, ready to depart on the morrow, and continued his speech until midnight. So that would be based on the thought, okay, if Saturday is the Sabbath, um, and then on the first day of the week, which if you look on the Gregorian calendar, that's Sunday, on the first day of the week, that would automatically assume that Paul was breaking bread with them on a Sunday and he taught till midnight. Well, I'm fixing to prove that wrong, and it doesn't even matter if it's Saturday or Sunday. I'm going to prove it wrong just because people don't understand what words are and how words have been added. This word has been added. So when you look at the King James Version, you see anything written in italics, that means that word was added later. It was not in the original scrolls that were written. This word was added later on. So here's another witness to that. We go to the interlinear on Bible Hub. So if you go to BibleHub.com and you punch any like Acts 27 here, and you choose interlinear. Look here, interlinear is only going to say exactly what was originally in the supposed to be in the scrolls, but anything bracketed was added. So it says, in then the first, so we're not going to say day. It says, in then the first of the week, having come together, we to break bread, Paul talked to them about to depart on the next day. He continued then the talk until midnight. Okay, so interlinear, as you can see, it reads, but it's because this was the true Greek words that were used, and so you see the Greek here, and this is how it would have been read out in the English. Of course, in the Greek, it's probably more fluid. In the English, it's a little not as fluid, just because it's a translation from one language into another here. But the word we want to take a look at, we're going to study on, is Sabbaton, which is 4521, this word for week. So Sabbaton, we're going to see in a bit, it depends on the context of the verse and the to tell you if it's a Sabbath or a week. So now let's look at 1 Corinthians 16:2, and I want to show right here. These two words were in italic. That's why I left that word God here, because it was added later. Now, of course, it means Elohim there, but that word or title was added later. And then even in 1 Corinthians 16:2, the two verses, Acts 27 and 1 Corinthians 16:2, the first two that they give as proven that's why you should keep Sunday as a day of worship. This is how it reads here. Upon the first day of the week, let every one of you lay by him in store, as God hath prospered him, that there be no gatherings when I come. So we're going to look at this 1 Corinthians 16, and we're going to break it down even a little further and show that he's not collecting what you think he's collecting. Now, 1 Corinthians 16:2 in the interlinear, again, it don't even bracket out day, because day is not even there. It says every first of the week. There's that Sabbaton again. Every first of the week, each of you aside him, let put treasuring up what if he may be prospered in, so that not when I might come, then collections there should be. So again, as you see, it doesn't read fluidly like in English, but again, that's because this was just translating right from Greek over to the English, and then of course they laid it out later where it was more fluid and such. But guys, we've got to understand what these words mean, and not only this word, but we got to go deeper and see what the root of the word meant and such. And it's going to give you so much information. And then when you find out what that true word meant, then go look it up etymologically and see what the English word was used for. It's a great tool to use, and it just makes these scriptures come alive and come true to you, because before that there's so much contradiction, and that's why you have people fighting so hardly about it. But when they start, if they go into this with an open objective, this is just like proving NASA is a liar. You know, there's people that have grown up. I didn't have no problem uh, saying NASA was a liar because I was never a big into space travel or anything like that. But and I, you know, my parents, they didn't speak to me on a lot of that stuff too. You know, I understood that they said man went on the moon, and I didn't question it, you know, until I became older, and then I started questioning man on the moon. But this is the same synopsis here as until I started really looking into the did man, and then I saw how much a liar that NASA was, that it made the scriptures open up to me even more when I started studying the scriptures in the same way I was looking at NASA. So it's our own due diligence, it's our own study, but we got to use these tools to get there and such, and not misapply what it's telling us. But so again, it doesn't even use day, where the King James adds day in there. So we got to be careful there, folks. So be careful of the words that get added. So I did a video called the Sea Night. So it'd probably be in your best interest if you want to learn a little bit more about the Sea Night. I'm going to give you some more information on it here, but it's not going to be as the video was. But go look up Sea Night. Go look it up etymologically, and don't put the apostrophe in there. Just put SENNIGHT in the etymology search and see what it says. All right, so this is that Greek Strong's number 4521, Sabbaton. It's of the Hebrew origin. It originates from Sabbath. That's where the word gets it, Sabbaton. Hebrew 7676, but it doesn't necessarily just mean the Sabbath. It does here. It says the Sabbath, that is Shabbat, or day of weekly repose from secular avocation. Also the observance or institution itself. So that's talking about festivals and feasts. By extension, a sea night. So to extend it even further, that is the interval between the two Sabbaths. So what is the interval between the two Sabbaths? Well, Sabbaths are always on a day, so the interval between the two Sabbaths would be nights, correct? So likewise, the plural in all the above applications, Sabbath, Sabbath day, or week. So the week depends on the context of the verse, in the same way with the Sabbath day, it depends on the context of the day. And we're going to show plenty of verses here. So in that Sea Night video, just the etymology, if you do look it up, this is what you're going to find. A portion of it. I didn't put all of it on the slide here, but a period or space of 7 days and nights a week. Archaic, a contraction by late 14th century of late Old English Sephenite, which Sephen is just a word for 7, itself from the Old English Sephen. There it is, Old English nida, literally. This is what sea night is, literally 7 nights. So that's why I don't say 7 days or sea days. It means it's sea nights. It's talking about the nights. And if you want to stop the video and read the rest of this, you can, but I'm going to continue on. Okay. Okay, and on that Sea Night video, this is one of the slides that I had, and it was a slide that I already had the Acts 27 and 1 Corinthians 16:2 already there from my Sea Night. And that Sea Night, I didn't know about that Sea Night until when I saw the Sea Night. That's when I did a video about the Sea Night, and the Sea Night makes so much more sense when you understand how the Sea Night works. So if you look here on my graph, it's got the blue is the yellow, of course, is day, and the dark blue is kind of like at night. Okay, so you got the first night, second night, third night, fourth night, fifth night, sixth night, and seventh night. So you have 7 nights that occur from new moon day to Sabbath day. So new moon day happens during the light of the sun, and then after that, that's the first sea night of the week. That's the first night of the week, or the first night of the sea night, or the first night of the 7 nights. Same way in the next week, the second week of any month. It's from this Sabbath, you get the first night, second night, and so on, 7 nights. And then again here, 7 nights. And then again here, 7 nights. And then we wait for the next new moon day, and then we start our weeks over. But as you can see here, this bracketed, that I put in brackets here to show those words do not exist. And the same way here, I showed here that day or the word God does not exist right there. So now we look back at 1 Corinthians 16:2, and it says here, and you saw what the got question said. It was to gather money for Paul, to pay Paul. And I want to show you, Christians, where you've been bumfuzzled by your preachers out there. And it's called fleecing the flock. And they use this right here, the Holy Bible, the Scriptures, to live these nice lives. I mean, I can guarantee you these two pastors at this church, they might not earn a lot of money, but they have a lot of things that are offered to them that are very valuable. Homes, cars, you name it, furnishings. I'm sure you could just name anything you need to live a prosperous life in this world today, and they have it. And I call that fleecing the flock, because they take this 1 Corinthians 16 and they totally obliterate it, and they don't teach it for what it truly is. So when I looked up 1 Corinthians 16, 1 through 4, and I looked up and I studied the words like we all should, this is what it really says here for me when I started looking at the deeper meaning of the words. So everything in red here is what I wrote in my take, and it also might be what the Greek Strong's number, if it's in parentheses, that's going to be the Greek Strong's number definition for it. So here's what Paul's saying in chapter 16, verses 1 through 4. He's not talking about money. Watch what he's talking about. Now, concerning the collection for the saints, as I have given order to the churches of Galatia, even so do ye. Upon the first night of the 7 nights between the Sabbath days, let every one of you lay by him in store as hath prospered. That means succeed in reaching him, that there be no gatherings when I come. So let's see what he's talking. What did they prosper from? Could it be that they prospered from that day before that first night of the week, that Sabbath night, which was right after the Sabbath day? Had they prospered in what they had gained in the teachings that day, or when we gathered together? I guarantee you, when I gathered together with these people that study deeper into the words and such, when we get together, I mean, it's like bouncing things off of each other, and you learn so much more, and it's just so awesome when you have two or more gather together in that way. It just becomes eye-opening and such. So how do we prosper on the Sabbath day? Because you don't do any work on the Sabbath day. How do you prosper? You succeed in reaching your goal of trying to know the truth. And what the truth sets you free, correct? So giving away your money, your hard-earned money, doesn't set you free unless you're paying the jail bondsman to get you out of jail. But that's the only thing that type of money can do for you. But the teachings on the Sabbath day that were done during that first century era, and which should be happening today, which is very seldomly happen, because they're not keeping the true Sabbath, and much less that they're studying deeper into the Word. But it says, and when I come, whomsoever ye shall approve by letters, a written message, them will I send to bring your liberality, especially the divine influence upon the heart and its reflection in the life, unto Jerusalem. So Paul was collecting letters. He was collecting letters. He was collecting a written messenger, because they didn't have email back then. They didn't have the ability to get on a social media site and share things on that social media site with their friends and family. They wasn't able to do that. They wrote letters. If they got inspired, they prospered. They succeeded in reaching a understanding on the scriptures like the Bereans did to see if them things were true. They succeeded in reaching an understanding. Then they wrote a message. And then look what Paul says in verse 4. And if it be meat, what's meat? I said, well, it be meat. I didn't know what that meant. But when I look it up, it means deserving, comparable, or suitable. So if it be meat, deserving, comparable, or suitable, that I go also, that's Paul saying, if I go also, they, the letters, shall go with me. So he's carrying letters. He's not taking money. They're not giving him money. They're not giving him goods to take to the other people. It's giving them the spiritual food and drink, what they had succeeded in reaching understanding in, and how it influenced upon their heart and their reflection in their life. That's what it was all about. That's the false teaching that these Baptists don't, that they tell you it's all about money. It's not. If any teacher or preacher out there, I don't care who they are, if they're asking for money and they're supposed to be ministers, then walk away, or don't take everything they say for good. Study it out for yourself, because there's so many false teachers out there that might have a little bit of good. That's like the tree of good and evil. I see men walking like trees. The tree of good and evil could be, they could have some good things that they speak. Now, I'm not saying the Baptist people are morally bad as far as this world understands morality, but what they teach is pure evil. It's what they believe is pure evil. So they're eating from the tree of good and evil. So you've got to eat from the tree of life, and the tree of life are these scriptures and studying deeper into these words. So that's what I'll say on the why do Christians worship on Sunday, as far as what my question to Chris Schroeder was. And we'll go to the next question. So this is this guy here. He's the head guy, and he's been there for years. If you get up early on a Sunday morning, you can catch them on the NBC affiliate out of Shreveport, Louisiana. It's First Baptist Church of Texarkana. His name is Jeff Shreve. But anyway, he's well known in the nation, because he puts out he sells CDs, he sells books, he does a lot of things, and this is who these people follow. They follow this man here. And do they truly follow the true word of Yahuwah, which is the Messiah himself that came in the flesh? Do they truly follow him, or do they follow this minister here? So anyway, this is just what I wanted to show, what he looked like, and talk about the two messages on their website. You can find the first one I went to, I think it was on the pagan date of January the 28th, and it was the truth about the Christian in the world. Okay, and John 15:18 through 17, and there were some good messages in there, but man, there's some bad stuff in there too that was given that day. And I took a lot of notes, and I went back. Not only did I go in person and listen to but I went back and watched the YouTube. They got a YouTube channel. Watched the YouTube video, and just took notes again through it, and made sure I was hearing what I was hearing when I was there in person. Then the second time I went, this was his message that he spoke on. It's Matthew 19:1 through 12. I think it was on the pagan date of March the 4th, Sunday, of course. The truth about marriage, divorce, and remarriage. So that's when he got into giving the breast comment. But there's two places, and I'm going to share it more toward the end of this video, but there's two places in his sermon that I thought it was derogatory toward women and to wives. Period. Any wife out there, what the comment he made was derogatory, and all women of the first week that he spoke, and they laughed at it as a joke, and I didn't. It was sad to me. that people were laughing for what he said. And I'll show that video toward the end of this video. All right, so this is him, and look, man, they do it all fancy up. You can see him up close and personal here. They got screens there, they got screens in the back, they got screens everywhere. Like I say, they televise his sermons on the NBC affiliate and such. But again, and he's a good speaker, man. He's eloquent. I can't speak eloquently, but he does, and he has soothing words. He tickles their ears, as they say. So when I first, basically, I'm not going to tell you the question I asked him, but I waited till the second week to ask him. I didn't ask him. I met him the first week because my friends, they took me up front and wanted me to meet him. But I wanted to wait till it was just me and him alone and to ask him the question I had. But one of his quotes was, he said, we keep the moral laws. And so I looked up moral in etymology, and it means associated with or characterized by right behavior. So, is it right behavior what they're doing? Is it moral? Is the behavior they're doing moral? And I didn't see that in his sermons. I saw some good things that he spoke on, but also saw some bad, evil stuff that he spoke on. Also associated with or concerning conduct or moral principles. So I see that he has a lower level of moral principles that he goes and conduct that he goes by. He has some good stuff again, but he has some bad stuff, and you'll see that in just these little short clips that I share. So so basically what I asked him, I said, which laws were done away with after the Messiah? So he said, well, none of the moral laws. We still keep all the moral laws. I said, okay. I said, well, what laws did he get? And he said, well, that eating law, where you're not supposed to eat unclean meat and stuff. He said, now all meats are clean to eat. I said, okay. So and we went back and forth, but I'll tell you a little bit more of our conversation. But anyway, I went to got questions, asked him, what does the Bible say about what foods we should eat? So here's what Got Questions says. So again, I'm not going to go, I'm going to nearly go through the whole thing here, but I want to mainly tag Mark 7:19 and Acts 10:15, okay, because that's the first two verses they give for their evidence. So Leviticus chapter 11 lists the dietary restrictions Elohim gave to the nation of Israel. So is that spiritual diet restrictions or is that literal diet restrictions? In my research, it's Yahuwah never changes. So it was never about literal diet. It was always about the spiritual diet, the spiritual food and drink that we consume. So it was always about that. That's that Leviticus chapter 11, and also I think it's Deuteronomy 14. And I used to, and look, I've been there, done that. My first thing after I walked away from the Baptist church, I stopped eating pork. so at that point in time in my growth in the Word, I was still just a baby. I hadn't learned how to walk yet. So it continues to say here, the dietary laws included prohibitions against eating pork, shrimp, shellfish, and many types of seafood, most insects, scavenger, and they say most insects because guess what? You're supposed to be eating locust. That's part of your dietary diet, your diet in Leviticus 11 if you're keeping it as a physical food and not a spiritual food. You're supposed to be eating locust, but most insects, scavenger birds, and various other animals. So, my question now is, if all meats are clean to eat, it would be so easy to just harvest your dogs and cats because they're just so, you wouldn't even have to worry about getting them fixed anymore. Or you could actually raise them like people do to sell them and stuff, but you could raise them for food and stuff. And so that would be my question to all people that believe that the dietary law was a literal dietary law. Why aren't they eating their dogs and cats, or not? Well, just maybe a stray that shows up and say, hey man, it's like a deer running through the woods. I'll just pick this dog up and carry him home, and we'll have them for dinner tonight. So it's just ridiculous. It's ridiculous how we all have gone where we've gone with these laws, these instructions that we were given in the scriptures to do. And we made them all these physical things, but it was always about worshiping in the spirit and truth. It was never about a physical thing. The dietary rules were never intended to apply to anyone other than the Israelites. Okay, so if you graft in to Israel or Jerusalem, if you get grafted in, so you got to change your diet, right? So dietary rules. So they don't want to be, the Baptists don't want to be Israelites. So look up what Israel is, and it's ones that strive with Elohim, the Almighty. They strive with them. That means they grow with them. They strive with them. That's part of Sarah's name. That's Sarah and El together. Sarah, Abraham's wife, because she strove with the Almighty, or she strove with Almighty. But Israel, the purpose of the food laws was to make the Israelites distinct from all other nations. Okay, no, I don't think that wasn't the purpose of the food laws, and we could do another study just on that, but we're not today. We're just going to look at these eating laws and these two verses they give. After this purpose had ended, the Messiah, Yahushua, not that name, but the Messiah, Yahushua, declared all foods clean. He declared all foods clean in Mark 7:19. Was that literal foods or spiritual foods? We'll get that answer here in a bit. Later, Elohim gave the Apostle Peter a vision that implied formerly unclean animals could be eaten. Do not call anything impure that Elohim has made clean. And that's in Acts 10:15. So let's take a look at it. If you want to stop the slide and study through these other ones, you can. All right, so Mark 7:14 through 23, and when he had called all the people, he said unto them, hearken unto me, every one, and understand. There is nothing from without a man that enter into him can defile him, but the things which come out of him, those are they that defile the man. If any man have ears to hear, let him hear. Okay, so I guess right here 15 is talking about we eat food and then we have to, we have to get rid of it out of our orifices in our body and such, and so that's what that coming out of man, that's what defiles a man. And it says, if anyone has ears to hear, let him hear. Why does he have to say that if it's so simple? If it's so simple that this is just talking about he's talking about food, literal food here. Why does he say, if any man have ears to hear, let him hear? Don't all ears hear physically? But no, he's talking about spiritually. Do they have spiritual ears? Can they hear what the Spirit is talking to them? And when he was entered into the house from the people, his disciples asked him concerning the parable. So, and this is how even his disciples, I mean, we have, when parables are first spoken, we have a hard time understanding them until we start breaking down it in context and also looking at what these words meant in the original writings, and then of course look at what they meant when they were translated over into the English. And he saith unto them, are ye so without understanding also? So there, his disciples who's been walking around with them and studying with them, he's asking them, are you without understanding also? So we all struggle with that. We all do. We have to be in the proper spirit. We got to have the spirit of Yahuwah in us to be able to understand what it's telling us. Do you not perceive that whatsoever thing from without enter into a man, it cannot defile him, because it entereth not into his heart, but into the belly, and goeth out into the drought, purging all meats. So, or drought, that's drought. But I highlighted belly here, and it's very interesting because it says, why does he say heart? When we eat food, does that go into our heart literally? No. It eventually will arrive at our heart after it's processed through our digestive tract and such, but that's usually a long process there. But so that's why he's saying, when they asked him about, they were having a hard time on it, said, do you not perceive that whatsoever thing from without entereth into the man, it cannot defile him, because it entereth not into his heart, but into his belly, and goeth out into the drought, purging all meats. So can chemicals defile you literally? Yes, absolutely. So this is and a lot of foods have chemicals in them. So he's not talking about that. And if we go in context, you're going to see that. And I want y'all to understand what this belly means, and we're going to do that on the next slide. And he said, that which cometh out of the man, that defileth the man. Okay, so when we go to the toilet and what we flushed out, does that defile us? You know, is that defiling us? No. Keep on. For from within, out of the heart of men, proceed evil thoughts, adulteries, fornication, murders, thefts, covetousness, wickedness, deceit, lavishness, and evil eye, blasphemy, pride, foolishness. All these evil things come from within and defile the man. So it's not about going to the toilet and pooping out the meats. It's about what's inside of you, what you say. Your evil thoughts come out of your mouth, your adulteries, your fornications, your murders, their thefts, covetousness, wickedness, all them evil things there. That's what it's talking about. And now let's look at the belly. It's Greek Strong's number 2836. It's cholia, which it's funny how that sounds like choleostomy, but part of your cavity in your body. By implication, the matrix, figuratively the heart. It's what we listen to and we take into our heart. So these Baptist ministers that I grew up listening to, and then of course I went to these 2 Sunday services, what proceeds out of their mouth, in what, if I had received those into my heart as a blessing, that would have defiled me. It would have defiled me if I would have done that. So we got to be careful of who we listen to. We got to do our own research. Again, don't listen to me. Take these things I'm speaking to and go search them out for yourself to see if these things are true. And that belly, here's another place that same word, Greek 2836, is used. And this is going to give you the answer of what that belly is. John 7:38. This is the Messiah speaking. He that believeth on me, as the scripture has said, out of his belly shall flow rivers of living water. So you see, you can't always think that belly is a literal belly on you. Okay? It's not physical. It's what comes into your heart, your emotions and such, and what thoughts you have is in your heart. Galatians 2:11 through 14. So this is another one. It wasn't mentioned by Gut Questions, but I want to just show this here, where this is before Peter's dream, I believe, or it's after Peter's dream, and this was Paul writing to the Galatians of what he had to do with Peter before Peter had his dream. And it's Galatians 2:11 through 14. But when Peter was come to Antioch, I withstood him to the face. That was Paul. This is Paul saying, I withstood him to the face because he was to be blamed. What was Peter up to? For before that, certain came from James. He did eat with the Gentiles. But when they were come, he withdrew and separated himself, fearing them which were of the circumcision. So any of his Jew associates showed up, he was in fear of being eating with the Gentiles. And again, we're going to look at this eating and what it does. It mean literal eating with them. He would get away from them. And the other Jews dissembled likewise with him. So the other Jews did the same thing, insomuch that Barnabas also was carried away with their dissimulation. So even Barnabas got, because he was basically following the crowd. Basically, the Jews did, and then Barnabas did too, which that was one of the ones that traveled with Paul. But when I saw that they walked not uprightly, according to the truth of the gospel, I said unto Peter before all of them, if thou, being a Jew, lived after the manner of the Gentiles, and not as do the Jews, why compel thou the Gentiles to live as do the Jews? So anyway, so this eating was spiritual food that they were eating. They wasn't talking about sitting down and having a meal at the table, a roast beef or anything like that. They were talking about eating spiritual food. So that eat is Greek Strong's number 4906, sunestio, almost sounds like a Spanish word, to take food in company with, so to eat with. So what were they eating? Was they eating literal food? I think we'll get our answer here in a bit. It only happened 5 times. That word happens 5 times in the King James. So here's a story that the Got Questions gave, Acts 10. But I wanted to read almost this whole chapter in context. That way you get the gist in context by itself, not even having to know what the words actually mean and the deeper understanding of them. So this is Acts 10, 1 through 8. And keep in mind that Paul's he's already chested up against Peter and said, hey, you're doing wrong. Why do you disappear when you're hanging out with the Gentiles and sharing the word with them? But as soon as your Jew friends show up, you take off, you get away and stuff. So this was the Father's way of showing Peter what he's supposed to be doing. There was a certain man in Caesarea called Cornelius, a centurion of the band called the Italian, devout and one that feared Elohim with all his house, which gave much alms to the people and prayed to Elohim always. He saw in a vision, evidently about the 9th hour of the day, an angel of Elohim coming into him and saying unto him, Cornelius. And when he looked on him, he was afraid and said, what is it? Adon. And Adon is a word for master. And he said, in most of your Bibles it'll say the Lord, but it's in Hebrew it's Adon. And he said unto him, thy prayers and thine alms are come up for a memorial before Elohim. And now send men to Joppa and call for Simon, whose surname is Peter. He lodges with one Simon, a tanner, whose house is by the seaside. He shall tell thee what they ought to do. And when the angel which spake unto Cornelius was departed, he called 2 of his household servants and a devout soldier of them that waited on him continually. And when he had declared all things unto him, he sent them to Joppa. So Cornelius is a centurion, which means he was a Roman commander over 100 soldiers. I'm sorry. So that centurion is where century is 100 years. But anyway, Cornelius, a centurion, he led a group of 100 men under him. So he had authority, but he was a devout and one that feared Elohim. So he was one that was converting from the old pagan ways of Rome, and he was converting over into the true worship of Elohim. So we get the verse 9 here. It said, on the morrow as they went on their journey, so these are Cornelius's men coming, and drew nigh into the city, Peter went up upon the housetop to pray about the 6th hour. And he became very hungry and would have eaten. But while they made ready, he fell into a trance and saw heaven open and a certain vessel descending upon us, as it had been a great sheet knit at the four corners and let down to the earth, wherein were all manner of four-footed beasts of the earth, wild beasts, and creeping things, and fowls of the air. And there came a voice to him, Rise, Peter, kill and eat. But Peter said, Not so, Adon, for I have never eaten anything that is common or unclean. And the voice spake unto him again the second time, What Elohim hath cleansed, that call not thou common. This was done thrice, and the vessel was received up again into heaven. Now while Peter doubted in himself what this vision, so even Peter, even after receiving the Spirit in Acts 2 at the Pentecost, he still doubted in himself, just like we all do, what this vision which he had seen should mean. Behold, the men which were sent from Cornelius had made inquiry for Simon's house, and stood before the gate, and called and asked whether Simon, which was surnamed Peter, were lodged there. While Peter thought on the vision, the Spirit said unto him, Behold, 3 men seek thee. Arise therefore, and get thee down, and go with them, doubting nothing, for I have sent them. Then Peter went down to the men which were sent unto him from Cornelius, and said, Behold, I am he whom ye seek. What is the cause that wherefore ye are come? So go back to where I've highlighted here in red. But Peter said, Not so, Adon, for I have never eaten anything that is common or unclean. And the voice spake unto him again the second time, What Elohim hath cleansed, that call not thou common. So now I got an epiphany while I'm sitting here. So this was before Peter was meeting with the Gentiles and eating with them. And this is when Paul had to get on to them, and then afterwards. But this was when he was doing it. Before then, he wasn't doing it. But when he started eating with the Gentiles, when his Jew brothers would show up, then he would start walking away. So we'll see here. We're going to keep on reading in context. But if this is talking about animals, guys, then why are you not following this? Why are you not killing your own animals and eating them? Because that's what he told Peter. So if this is food, going to the supermarket is not killing your food. And if all meats are clean to eat, that means go out and slay you a dog or a cat or a deer or whatever and eat it. But not going to the supermarket is not fulfilling that part. So don't make this your way of eating whatever you want, because even in the physical, because we know that that's not good for us when we do that. We got to be careful of what we physically eat, and stay away from a lot of the things that this world eats, because they're unhealthy for you in the long run. But anyway, Peter was struggling with this vision because he's wondering what the Father was talking about on being common or unclean. And keep in mind that Peter grew up in the period of time where the Pharisees were teaching them that it was about literal foods. They didn't understand, the Pharisees didn't understand the spiritual sense of those laws from Leviticus 11 and Deuteronomy 14. They had taken them and turned them into physical things. And that's why, if you truly know what the Torah is, and it's not a burden, but if you try to do all those physical things, I mean, we can't even feel the physical portion of the Torah, everything that the Torah is in the spiritual, or I meant spiritual. We can't fulfill it spiritually because we fall short of the esteem of Elohim, every one of us. But it's not a burden when we try to keep it in spirit and truth. It's not a burden at all. Acts 10:23 through 33. Then called he them in and lodged, and on the morrow, so Peter even invited these Romans in, which were considered an abomination to the Jews, and went away with them, and a certain brethren from Joppa accompanied him. So I imagine them Gentiles might have been some Romans, because the Jews looked upon the Romans as an abomination back in that day. because they worshipped all kinds of gods. And the morrow after they entered into Caesarea, and Cornelius waited for them, and had called together his kinsmen and near friends. And as Peter was coming in, Cornelius met him and fell down at his feet and worshipped. But Peter took him up, saying, Stand up, I myself also am a man. And as he talked with him, he went in and found many that were come together. And he said unto them, Ye know how that it is unlawful thing for a man that is a Jew to keep company or come unto one of another nation. But Elohim hath shewed me that I should not call any man common or unclean. So there you go, guys. In context, it was never about animals. It is about Peter thought it was unlawful for a Jew to keep company or come unto one of another nation. But after the Messiah came and he said, Go speak to all the nations, that's what they were talking about. Give them the spiritual food, eat with them, drink with them. And it was always about the spiritual food and the spiritual drink, or the spiritual meat, as the King James Version says. Therefore came I without gainsaying. As soon as I was sent for, I asked therefore for what intent ye have sent for me. And Cornelius said, 4 days ago I was fasting until this hour. He's retelling this story. And at the 9th hour I prayed in my house, and behold, a man stood before me in bright clothing, and said, Cornelius, thy prayer is heard, and thine alms are had in remembrance in the sight of Elohim. Send therefore, I forgot to do that one. Send therefore to Joppa, and call hither Simon, whose surname is Peter. He is lodged in the house of Simon a tanner by the seaside, who, when he is cometh, shall speak unto thee. Immediately therefore I sent to thee, and thou hast well done that thou art come. Now therefore are we all present before Elohim, to hear all things that are commanded thee of Elohim. So that was most. Well, not most. Here's the rest of Acts 10, 34 through 43. I think there's a few scriptures after this, and I'll let y'all look them up for yourself. But for the case of this study, I just wanted to share these verses here. Then Peter opened his mouth and said, Of a truth, I perceive that Elohim is no respecter of persons. So again, it goes back to the persons. I'm not talking about a four-legged beast, animals, or anything like that. But in every nation he that feared him and worketh righteousness accepted with him. The word which sent unto the children of Israel, preaching peace by Yahushua HaMashiach, he is Adon of all. That word, which was published throughout all Judea, and began from Galilee after the baptism which John preached. How Elohim anointed Yahushua of Nazareth with the Holy Ghost and with power, who went about doing good and healing all that were oppressed of the devil, for Elohim was with him. And we are witnesses of all things that he did, both in the land of the Jews and in Jerusalem, whom they slew and hanged on a tree. Him, Elohim, raised up the third day and shewed him openly, not to all people, but unto witnesses chosen before of Elohim, to us who did not eat and drink with him after he rose from the dead. So there's that eat and drink with him after he rose from the dead. What were they eating and drinking? And he commanded us to preach unto the people and to testify that is he which was ordained of Elohim, the judge of quick and dead. So they didn't sit down for a physical meal. Look what he's doing. They were getting commands from the Messiah. To him give all the prophets witness that through his name whosoever believeth in him shall receive remission of sins. So it's never about eating animals. Not at all. Clean animals or unclean animals. There's no animals, period. So if you want to read the rest of Acts 10, there's a few verses after that, but I wanted to carry on to Acts 11, 1 through 8, because it uses that word eat here. And the apostles and brethren that were in Judea heard that the Gentiles had also received the word of Elohim. So this is all of them getting this knowledge that they're going to be able to eat with these ones that were considered unclean, which were that were considered Gentiles, which were called heathens at the time. And when Peter was come up to Jerusalem, they that were of the circumcision contended with him, saying, Thou wentest into men uncircumcised, and didst eat with them. But Peter rehearsed the matter from the beginning and expounded it by order unto them, saying, I was in the city of Joppa praying, and in a trance I saw a vision, a certain vessel descend, as it had been a great sheet let down from heaven by the four corners, and it came even to me, upon the which when I had fastened mine eyes, I considered and saw four-footed beasts of the earth, and wild beasts, and creeping things, and fowls of the air. And I heard a voice saying unto me, Arise, Peter, slay and eat. But I said, Not so, Adon, for nothing common or unclean hath at any time entered into my mouth. So, again, the vision is telling him to slay and eat. So it's not talking about him to physically kill animals. It's talking about to utterly slay people with the edge of your sword, which is your mouth, which is another spiritual nugget that Torah it gives you when you look deeper into what the words are. Corinthians 10:3-4, and did all eat the same spiritual meat, and did all drink the same spiritual drink, for they drank of the spiritual rock that followed them, and that rock was Mashiach, the Messiah. So anyway, it was all about eating and drinking spiritual things. It was never about literal eating and drinking things that were given in the law back in the day, and it was never about the Messiah getting rid of any speculated law that was given on eating literal animals and such. So it's just been a misinterpretation that has been taught down through the centuries, and it's up to us to figure out these misteachings. So I hope y'all each go out and study these out for yourself. 2 Peter 3:15-16, and account the long suffering of our Adon is salvation, even as our beloved brother Paul also according to the wisdom given unto him hath written unto you, as always also in all epistles, speaking in them of these things, in which are some things hard to be understood, which they that are unlearned and unstable wrest, as do also the other scriptures, unto their own destruction. So guys, it'd be best if you learn the scriptures and not let a one teacher teach you. You need to go out and learn how to study for yourself. Look at the deeper meaning of these words. Like each one of these words in here have a Strong's Greek number 2. You can go look them up and for yourself and see what they mean and how they're applied in different verses. That's another way to study. You can also read everything in context and also look at it etymologically when it's translated from the Hebrew and Greek over into the English. That's where we can mainly get our best understanding of these English words when they're first translated over. So, but there's in the unstable, say, I've been both of these. Tanya and I have been both. I was unlearned. For 39 years I was unlearned. Then I started learning, but because I didn't pick up on the spiritual things, I was unstable in my thought process of what I was doing. And so we did some, me and Tanya did some wacky stuff. Tanya, it was about another 8 years for her to start coming out of the Baptist church. But when she did, when we started trying to keep the festivals and the Sabbaths the best way we knew how, we were just, we were being unstable in how we were doing it and such. And so we were learning, but we're still unstable. So you go to both, usually most people will go to both these areas before they kind of get hit right in between of what the Father is really trying to get over to you. That's all about the Spirit. It's all about spiritual worship. It's all about spiritual eating and drinking. Now, so I asked this question too after Jeff Shreve got off of the eating. And I told him, I said, look, those animals you're talking about are not animals. They're character traits of people. and how strong they are in the Word or how weak they are in the Word. And those animals that are giving that. And he said, "Man, I've never heard that teaching before." And which that doesn't mean anything. Just because you haven't heard something, you probably haven't heard about the thing that that NASA's a liar either, and you probably haven't figured that one out either for yourself. But how he came back of that, how, just saying, I've never, and he said, you better be careful with those type of teachings like that and such. And so this is at the time when I started giving scriptural answers to some of his things. He started backing away. At first he was cordial, shook my hand, was standing up, and then he started backing away and acting like he had to leave type of deal. And it was kind of an uncomfortable thing for him, it looked like. So but anyway, I persisted. So and then I asked them the same question I asked Chris Schroeder, his associate minister, and asked him, does Elohim require Sabbath keeping of Christians? But I asked it, I didn't ask it in this way, but it got questions. That's the only way I could get it as close is, why do the Baptists keep Sunday worship? And so when he gave the answer, he said, well, all know that it's on the Lord's Day now. Well, there's one time, guys, that the Lord's Day is actually mentioned in Scripture. It's in Revelation 1:10, where John's wrote the Lord's Day. The previous times when Paul's letters, he never mentions the Lord's Day or anything like that. And it's because these guys, they misunderstand what a Sinite is. When it was talking about Paul teaching until midnight, he was talking till midnight of the Sabbath day. They had kept the Sabbath. They continued on after into the evening and into the first night of the 7 nights between the Sabbaths. They continued that Sabbath night until midnight. It was not the next day yet. It never was considered a day. It was still the same day, but it was at the night of that particular part of the day. So real quickly, y'all can stop this slide, but this is all the Sabbath days that the Messiah kept here. That you can, and there's more than this, but this is just, I wanted to fit it on just one slide here, and these are all Paul's. So right here, I got 4 here, but also Paul says, be you followers of me, even as I also of Mashiach, which is the Messiah, Yahushua. So if the Messiah did it, if the Messiah observed the Sabbath day, I think there's one time, when he came to Nazareth where he had been brought up, and as his custom was, he went into the synagogue on the Sabbath day and stood up for it to read. So when he went in that gathering into that, read the rest of this story. The Messiah didn't come in just to teach himself. There was other people reading from the scrolls that he had. They handed them the scroll of Isaiah. So that was the scriptures that was always spoken of. The Bereans, what they were looking at was not the gospel, because the gospels had not been put together yet. So the Bereans were going back and studying the scriptures from the original covenant, what most people call the Old Testament. So if the Messiah, his custom was to go into the synagogue on the Sabbath day, and if Paul, it was his, here Paul says, and here it says here, and Paul, as his manner was, went into them 3 Sabbath days, reasoned with them out of the scriptures. And I forgot to hit my little pointer here now, but these are the 2 I was pointing out, Luke 4:16 and Acts 17:2. But Paul, as his matter was, went into them in 3 Sabbath days, reasoned with them out of the scriptures. So even the Messiah was handed the scroll. He spoke out of Isaiah a few verses, and then he handed the scroll back. So your Sabbaths are supposed to intended to not be just listening to one man. You're supposed to be eating from one another. and such. Now, of course, if the Messiah is in the room, that's the main one you want to be eating from, because he's the word of Yahuwah. He comes straight out of Yahuwah as his word. So, but anyway, so if Messiah did it, Paul did it, and then Paul says, imitate me as I imitate the Messiah, then I'm going to do that. That's how I'm going to do. I'm going to keep the Sabbath, but it's not going to be a Saturday unless the lights above tell me it's going to be on a Saturday for that particular month. So another thing, he mentioned, I asked him, he had actually mentioned Pentecost in his scriptures in his first teaching that he did that I listened to. This is Jeff Shreve, the main preacher, the main service. And he had talked about transgenderism, which is in scripture in the law, Torah. And then he talked about atheism and stuff, which is in the law. He talked about homosexuality, which is in the law, and he also mentioned Pentecost. And he actually said to count to Pentecost, which he didn't know the true count, which I wasn't going to speak to him on that and such. But anyway, but when he said to Pentecost, I said, shouldn't we continue to keep the festivals of the Yahuwah? And again, this was as he was backing away, and I said, didn't Paul keep the feast? And the Messiah, if the Messiah kept the feast and he fulfilled the law, and then Paul kept the feast, I said, shouldn't we be keeping the feast? And boy, he was really wanting to get out of there. He started walking away from me at that time, so I followed. But here you go. Here's our scriptures here. This is the Messiah. This was his parents when he was 12 years old. They went to the feast of Passover, so his parents took him there. And it was the custom to keep Passover for all, anybody that lived in Judea at that time, in the kingdom of Judea. That was the feast. That was the first feast of the year. Here it is, and says, now when he was in Jerusalem at the Passover in the feast, many believed in his name when they saw the miracles which he had did. So that's after his ministry had begun. John 4:45 says, then when he was come into Galilee, the Galileans received him, having seen all the things that he did at Jerusalem at the feast, for they also went unto the feast. And then it says, I got three separate verses here in John 7. Now the Jews' Feast of Tabernacles was at hand. Well, of course, at that time, the Messiah had not been given him orders to go share the gospel with the other people that were not of the kingdom of Judea. He said to go speak to the nation of Israel initially. So they kept this feast. This is the last feast. This is the very end feast was at hand. So to continue on, it says, now about the midst of the feast, Yahushua went up into the temple and taught. So, there's a midway point of that feast, and that's because it's basically an 8-day festival. It begins on a Sabbath and it ends on a Sabbath, and the last day is called the Great Day and such. But anyway, he went up about midway part. So if Yahushua wasn't going to keep the feast, why did he go up and do it? And then it says here, in the last day, that great day of the feast, which is that 8th day, Yahushua stood and cried, saying, if any man thirst, let him come unto me and drink. So there goes back to that symbolic drink. He's not saying, hey, I got a Pepsi in my hand, come unto me and drink. He's not going to offer you a Pepsi. You don't need to be drinking Pepsis anyway. Just a good old non-chlorinated, fluoride water is the best thing for you. And then we see where Paul here, and when the day of Pentecost was fully come, they were all, well, this was before Paul. This is Peter and the disciples, and I think there was 3,000 gathered together in one accord. Why are they continued to keep Pentecost if the Messiah hung everything on the cross, as most Christians have been taught by their false teachers? Acts 18:21, but bade them farewell, saying, I must by all means keep this feast that cometh in Jerusalem, but I will return again to you, if Elohim will. And he sailed from Ephesus. So this was Paul. He had to keep the feast. That's what he's talking about. I believe that feast was Passover too. Not sure. Don't hold me to that. But Acts 20:16, for Paul had determined to sail by Ephesus because he would not spend the time in Asia, for he hasted for it's possible for him to be at Jerusalem the day of Pentecost. So there's Paul celebrating Pentecost as such as the disciples did after the Messiah had died and resurrected and went to the Father. 1 Corinthians 5:7-8. This is Passover. This is Passover week, but Paul is teaching it in a symbolic sense. He said, purge out, therefore, the old leaven. So Tanya and I, or when I first came into the knowledge of the law and about the festivals, we literally would go into our house and remove all the leaven. And a lot of times we'd either throw it away or we'd move it off out of our house into a camper or whatever, thinking we were doing right. But then you would go bring all this leaven. I mean, you can't cook with certain things without, leaven is naturally in the air and such. So this is the old leaven is the old ways that we've been taught on how to be moral, and that's the leaven. That's the leaven because it's just the leaven of the look at the last church area that we're in today, the Laodicean area. Look at the leaven of the Laodiceans. They think they're rich, but they're poor and wretched. They're naked. They think they're rich in knowledge because they've been taught by these guys that tickle their ears, but they're not. It's because they haven't diligently searched out themselves, just like I didn't, and just like Tanya didn't. We didn't do it. So we purge out that old way, that you may be a new lump, as ye are unleavened. For even Mashiach, our Passover, is sacrificed for us. Therefore, let us keep the feast, not with old leaven. So he's still talking about keep the feast, not with old leaven, neither with the leaven of malice and wickedness, but with the unleavened bread of sincerity and truth. So that's it. That feast is all about the morality of how we're supposed to live our life, and we're supposed to be humble. And, that's hard to do. I mean, it's hard. There's always a little bit of ego in a lot of us. I'm not going to commit to saying everybody has an ego, but there's a little bit of ego in most of us. And so that's what puffs us up and stuff. So this is Paul talking about, you still keep that feast, because those feasts are shadow pictures of your travels, as I've spoken on it before. But if you notice here that all the three major festivals that you have to go to Jerusalem on is the Passover week. You're in Jerusalem, which of course, spiritual Jerusalem, not literal Jerusalem. I wouldn't even want to be in literal Jerusalem, especially nowadays. But Jerusalem, if you look up this word, it means the teachings that bring peace, shalom. This is Yara. Yara means to teach, and or instructions, to give instructions. And shalom, this salam here is shalom in Hebrew. It just means the teachings that give you peace, that makes you be well in your heart, being, and mind. So this is what I'm learning, and Tanya is learning, and what these words are really telling us is how we gain peace. And then you have Pentecost, which is the middle festival too, that Paul and the disciples kept, just basically based on scriptural evidence. And then again, he talks about Pentecost here. And then tabernacles, we saw where the Messiah kept it with the others and such. So again, so he was already there Yehoshua was already there at the feast. He just didn't go up into the temple and teach until the middle part of it and such. So again, this is the Baptist way of preventing you from really understanding what the true spiritual journey in his word is all about, is their false teachings. Now, this is closer This is actually a video. It's a short video. I just went to this was his first message. I'm going to play it for you here, but listen to how he, kind of the derogatory way he spoke about women here.
The Bible also uses the term, is cosmos, is the Greek word for world. It means to order. We get cosmetics from that word. A woman puts on cosmetics to bring order to the disorder. So just thought I'd throw that out there.
And they laugh about it.
I mean, if the barn needs painting, paint it. And so,
That was real derogatory right there.
what? I mean, I think cosmetics are a good thing.
Yeah. Okay. So there you go. There's his first thing when he spoke. And again, he's a very good speaker and everything, but what he speaks is not necessarily good. Now this is his second sermon. I was there. I was sitting right over in about this area here. But anyway, he's talking to him, and he's fixing to make this comment about the breast, and the reason why this video is called what it is today is what he brought to my mind when he said this.
Proverbs chapter 5 talks about be exhilarated always with your wife. Let her breast satisfy you at all times. That's a great verse. You know, if you, it just is. It's just a good verse. So be exhilarated always with her love. God is for this.
So, say again, he's making a sexual innuendo out of what the scriptures were actually talking about, and it's just, I believe that verse is Proverbs 5:18, if I'm not mistaken. But anyway, it's talking about the one that you marry, who you're married to, and the word is who you marry. That's the marriage feast. It talks about, you get married to the Messiah, but he was the word, and that's our marriage. Get married to the word, and so that's where that we suckle the breast um, of that word, and he took it to a sexual nature, and he had a prime opportunity to teach what the spiritual sense of what Solomon is saying, but I don't think this guy um, even is aware of the spiritual sense of what he's missing on it. Now, next on February 18 on Sunday, they're going to have a Valentine's get together. You're Still the One banquet. Okay. It's $30 a couple, 6 p.m. in the atrium. So, again, this is all Rome, all things from Rome. They're breastfeeding on the harlot of Rome. So long before Valentine's Day was celebrated, a festival that had nothing to do with love took place around the same time of the year. It was called Lupercalia, and it occurred on February 15th each year in ancient Rome. Instead of flowers and chocolates, the festival was marked by more ominous rituals. So if you want to know more about that, you can go to time.com and look up this word here, Lupercalia. Which became Valentine's. So again, they're still eating from the harlot of Rome. That's where they get their spiritual food from, is through those festivals of Valentine's Day. Then you got the Easter event, which they misconstrue totally, and then of course you've got Halloween, which is straight out of Rome, and so do you have Christmas that's straight out of Rome too. So anyway. It's just bad stuff that these guys are teaching out there, and I feel it's our duty to go out there and speak to these individuals that go to these churches, and then if these people invite us to their churches, it's up to us to go speak to these teachers if we see that they're teaching in a falsehood. So again, I want to remind each and every one of us here, keep Romans 3 through 4 in mind. For what if some did not believe? Shall their unbelief make the faith of Elohim without effect? And he said, Elohim forbid. Yeah, let Elohim be true, but every man a liar, as it is written. So we keep the truth in his word. That's where we get our truth at. And anything outside of his word is from man, and we got to be leery of it, for every man is a liar. So that covers us all, mankind, men and women, as it is written, that thou mightest be justified in thy sins and mightest overcome when thou art judged. So if, again, this video was done out of love. If you have been suckling from the breast of the whore of Rome, or from the harlot daughters of Rome, then my behest to you, as though me and Tanya have done, we walked away from those teachings, and we started self-studying, and we started associating with others that had seen that these things were being false teachings, and they walked away from these assemblies. And it's it's left up to each and one of us to work out our own deliverance as far as that. But we can eat and drink from one another when each of us are searching deeper into his word. So I have people in my life. Tanya has people in her life, and we have people in our lives together that we eat and drink from, that they have these good things, and they're seeking the truth. They're always seeking the truth. And these ones out there that are lazy and don't do their own due diligence, then that's not the ones that you want to eat and drink with. Those are the heathen or the pagans that you don't want to drink. That the ones out there still keeping the festivals. I cannot gain any knowledge from anyone that believes that Christmas is a righteous way to worship the Father. I can't eat or drink for anything from what they say. So get off the breast. I think there's a saying out there, he's still on his mama's breast. Well, there's most of this world is still on the mother's church's breast. Ultimately, all roads go back to Rome. So breastfed by the whore of Rome. And that's what that church is. It's a complete whore. It's adulterated the word of Yahuwah and such. And again, for all my friends and family out there that have not yet seen the truth, I just pray that each and one of you get convicted in yourselves to start researching these things out for yourself, and don't let lies continue to be told to you. Test and prove all things. If somebody tells you something, go test it out and prove it. If it has something to do with your salvation, test and prove it each and every time. So I love y'all. This was done out of love. I look forward to my next video. I look forward to any comments that you have out there, whether you want to make a comment against the video or for the video. Either way, I'll take it either way. I'll leave my phone number, my email on in the information box, where if anybody wants to email me or text me or call me and speak to me about this, I'd love to do that. And I'll even challenge Chris Schroeder and Jeff Shreve to get on a Zoom meeting, and let's get some people on there, and let's go through some of their teachings, and let's let Elohim be true and every man a liar, and let's take it to the scripture. So everybody have a great night, and we'll see you next time. Love y'all. Praise, as always, we always give praise to the Father above. Praise to Yahuwah. Hallelujah indeed.